Good evening everybody and a very warm welcome to Mildenhall and Districts, and my name's Susannah and I live with trains, and today is Susannah's Come Build With Me build number 2, where we look at transforming where we left off our foam sort of building, our foam board building, into something a bit more substantial like you saw in the previous Susannah's Come Build With Me Part 1 update. So if you haven't seen that and you're interested to see where we're going with this, then may I suggest you have a look at that video first. So we're going to start having a look at transforming this into something very similar. Before we get started, I wanted to talk to you about a few vital products that I'm using for this. And I say vital because, well, I'll show you the consequences of not doing it that way. And these are things that I've learned through my scratch building. I mean, you live and learn with these things. And I would use this. This is PVA. And we've all got PVA, we all know what it is. And this one happens to come from Wix's, but you can use, excuse me, whatever PVA you want to use, as long as it's PVA. Because we are going to be using plasticard, and this is a full plasticard sheet, and this is a Slater's one, I think it is, it's planking, 4mm plank, space planking, number 434. That's how it comes when you buy it. And the reason for using, I mean, you might think it's a bit strange, why would you use PVA on plastic? A, because it works, and B, it's a lot kinder, especially with foam board, because my building at the back is quite badly warped in places, and I will show you an example of another building that I have here, which is this building, which I still have, hasn't been chucked out. It's still survived. Many of you may remember this building. And this building is actually about 3 foot long, and you can see the consequences of using Yoo-hoo on this building with the plastic card if you don't do it properly, which I didn't. You can see all this bubbling effect. It's all occurred along the side here, all along there. You can see how badly it's been damaged. The roof was the same. Again, you could say it's partially my fault because I literally just put the PVA on and slapped it on, whereas I should have probably spaced it and try and stretch the PVA. But to be honest with you, that's what it does. And the consequences are even worse on foam board because it eats into the foam board, which is what this building is. So I would stay well away from any kind of glues like Yoo-hoo for this, and I would really recommend using PVA for it, because when I did my carriage shed, which is why it's at the back and not at the front anymore, is because it just got damaged in a similar sort of way to that. But because it's at the back, you're not really going to see it, and the side that's really badly damaged is on the side that you can't see. So I've managed to kind of disguise it and hide it. It's at the back and it's fine. Ideally, in an ideal world, I would like to rebuild it, and maybe I would at some point. So what I did as an experiment was on the outside when I did it, which is what I should have done in the first place, is if I was to experiment, I should have just experimented on the inside, but I didn't. I did it the other way around. So when I realised what had happened to the outside and how damaged it got using the Yoo-hoo and it just ate into the foam board and it damaged it. When I did the inside, I experimented with PVA, and I thought, well, that's what I'll do, is I'll experiment it, and it actually worked. The other building, which I showed you in build number 1, that has also been constructed using PVA. It does take longer to go off, but it is safer to use without it eating into the plastic card. I did find, however, that sometimes I had to sort of make sure I go over the PVA bits again, which didn't quite stick down properly. So bear that in mind, but to be honest with you, that is a far safer route to go down than using the Yoo-hoo. I know we tend to use Yoo-hoo quite regularly, and I did use it quite a lot. I've now come away from using Yoo-hoo on plasticard, just because of my experiences with it. I mean, some people may have had different experiences, but in my experience, I would rather not use Yoo-hoo if I can avoid it. The next important tool that you're going to need for this is one of these. It's a pair of scissors, but not this pair of scissors, but this one. Now they both look identical, but what I'd really strongly recommend, so this is the one that this one is, if you take a look at that, that's a normal pair of scissors. This is the pair I sort of recommend that you do get, is one of these. And I'm sure you can see it's curved at the tip. Now the reason why you need, well, I say you need, it's entirely up to yourself whether you buy any of this stuff or whether you even listen to me, is that I found this particularly useful. Now this is the sort of thing you get like from Boots, like you look in a sort of ladies section, the makeup section, the nails and that kind of stuff, manicure section. So that kind of, so if you go to Boots or somewhere, you'll probably find it somewhere along those lines. And you want a curved one. And the reason is, for that, is, I may show it to you later, it depends, is that when you come to doing these edges, sometimes you might find there's a little bit of an overlap between the piece that's come out and the piece that's going up. And this allows you, with the curve, to really, really manipulate it and get into there to get a really, really straight cut and a really close cut. But sometimes when you're lying flat, using the flat pair, you can't get into it because essentially your fingers are right up against it and you haven't got that little bit of leeway. That's why you need the curved pair of scissors. And again, if you're too young to use these kind of scissors, get your parents to do it for you and sort that out for you. The next important thing that you're going to need as well, let me just show you, bear with me a minute, is these. Now, what are they? Well, basically they are clamps. I got these from Wilko's when they were still around. These cost about £1 or 50p each or something like that. I can't even remember now. I've got 4 of these, but don't panic. If you haven't got those, you can make do with the humble close pegs. So if you haven't got clamps, then you can use some close pegs or something like that. And what you use that for is just to pinch the plastic and between when you're gluing. So basically you can hold the plastic card onto the foam board whilst the glue sets. So you should just basically just use it as a clamp just to hold it. So that's what you are needing that for. So as you can see, I've got some plastic card sheets. One that is a complete sheet, one and 2 pieces which are used. And the reason for this is, the reason why I've got some used pieces is that I tried, in order to try and keep the costs down on the builds, what I tried to do is, because I was making 2 buildings, obviously this might not even apply to you, but is essentially I was just trying to maximise the plastic card for the 2 buildings that I had, so to minimise the wastage essentially, which is why I've got 1 full sheet and a couple of spare pieces. So I should be able to do one side out of that, one side out of that, and then the ends out of that, and then the roof I do actually need to get some more plastic card. And but we'll get onto that as and when we do it. Now, this build is going to be different to the other builds, but it's why I'm explaining it to you and showing it to you. But essentially, putting the plastic card is the same as doing it the card way. So what I show you here, it's the same thing that I use. I'm still going to use the PVA. I'm still going to cut it out and all the rest of it and do all of that. So we're going to start making a start on that now. So if you're interested, just stay tuned and we'll get on with that. So I'm giving you this view, so hopefully you can have a good view of everything. Let me just make sure that the the camera's clean. So essentially what I've done is this first piece, I've got 2 sheets. I've just marked out 9 centimeters because that's the height of the building. And I do like working with plastic card. It's nice and easy to work with. And as you can see, just using a regular pair of scissors. And that is that. So now I've got 2 pieces of plastic card which will allow us to make the sides. Now what I will say is it is important to do the sides first and then do the front, then do the ends, I should say. That, well, I say it's important, but it's entirely up to yourself. But that's how I do it. I find that it's a lot easier if you do the sides first. Because if you do the front first, or do the ends first, I find that you might end up cutting it a bit short. Whereas if you do the sides first, you've already got the overall width of the building to allow for the extra millimetre or 2 that you're going to need for the depth of the plastic card. So I'm just opening up my sort of clamps and closed pegs in the ready position. And then all I'm doing is just running some glue all the way up it, that first piece. And right to the very edge, right to the corners. And then what you do is you just stick it on. But what I just do is just sort of massage it in a bit so the glue sort of really sort of penetrates and moves around. So so it's not going to end up avoiding getting those sort of marks that you had before. Now, there's going to be some bits to this which I haven't done before. It's like the roof is actually going to be made out of card, not out of foam board, so just so you're aware of that. So we are going to do a bit of mixing and matching, and the reason for that, and I'll explain it when we get there, but as you can see, that's gone off pretty quickly. So then the next piece to do is going to be this piece here. So I'll just take a little reading of that. That's saying 15.5 centimeters for that. So we've got 15.5 centimeters. Where's my pen? Here we go. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you need to trim it down slightly. It's better to have it slightly more than slightly less. And then we can go and draw the line there. Right. So that is that, and then what I do is I offer it up and see how we're doing, and that looks spot on. And as you can see, you can't really see the join. There's actually a join there, but you can't really see it. So that's come out really well. Sometimes if it's not quite right, what I can do is I'll spin it around and see if it works any better the other way around. But as you can see on, actually, you might not be able to see, but on this side, you can still see some of the white underneath. So it actually works better this way around. So that's what I do. Sometimes it's like just to make sure you see which side's got the best join, you kind of go with that. So now what I'm going to do, as you can see, I've got a bit of an aperture here for the door. So I'm just going to quickly mark that up with my pen. And as you can see, I've cut it out here. Thing is, when you mark on plasticard, because it's plasticard, sometimes the pen lines do evaporate quite quickly. So you do have to kind of be quite quick about it. Now, one of the other things about using these curved pair of scissors, as you can see, is it allows you to kind of really get into the corner nice and quickly. Excellent. And then you can go in with the other pair of scissors afterwards if you need to. But to be honest with you, it doesn't essentially matter too much. And I'll tell you for why. Is because we're going to put a frame around this. So if it's not quite straight, you can use the frame, the strips that we're going to be using afterwards to, let's do a little test fit there. And that is, look at that. That is pretty much bang on. Excellent, really pleased with that. So put those bits away. Back to the Wix's glue. Right, here we go. It's all there. And then, like before, just have to sort of massage it in. So that you get rid of those sort of curves on the now this is going on very nicely. Yeah, I'm well pleased with that. And just like that, you know, you've already, and the nice thing about PVA as well is that you've got a bit of time to play with it. So there you go, there's one side done. So I'll just come back to you once I've done the second side, because there's no point showing you that. It's essentially the same thing. So I'll just get on and do this side and then we'll be done. Now I'm just about to glue this last piece in, which I haven't done yet. And one thing I wanted to mention before I forget is, because PVA gives you a little bit of time before it actually sets, it is a good idea if you to have the second piece pre-cut and offer it up to the first piece, and to make sure that when you join them up together you get the best possible seam that you can, because sometimes when you put this on you might not realize it's not quite straight or it's slightly misaligned. So it's quite good, it's a good idea that to get the best possible line is, if you have the second piece already cut to go into position, is that if you just offer it up and see whether or not it's actually straight on the other end, and then if it doesn't, then you can slightly tweak it and align it to make sure that you get the best possible join and it's as straight as possible. So that's just something just to bear in mind as well. So we're just gonna, I'm just gonna go straight onto there, which I don't normally. So I'm just gonna just do this last bit here before we move on to the next section. I mean, like I said, PVA does work, and actually on the foam board it goes off very quickly. So like I'd say before, just offer it up and also massage it in. And then that way you'll get the best possible line, best possible join that you can. And like I said, because it's not quite, you got a bit of time to play with PVA, you know, you can sort of tweak it just to suit. And you can see that that's, I mean, like I say, I think you'll always see the line, but that's just kind of like a little tip. It's just that, like I said, if you have the second piece already offered up, like I said, once this is, I mean, look how sturdy that is already. I mean, it was always sturdy to begin with. That's the thing about using plasticard, with foam board, is that it is quite sturdy to begin with as a straight piece. If you try and bend it or whatever, then obviously it loses its rigidity. So the next thing to do is we're going to mark out the ends and fit in the ends. And the easiest way to do that is if I'm going to take a measurement from the top there, from the middle, and it's 10. But what you can, if you want to do it the easy way, the easiest way to do it is essentially just make sure that you've got the planks always facing vertically, not horizontally. So you can just do it like that. And lucky for me that this one sheet, I've done it before where I'd miscalculated it basically, where I didn't realise the width of the building, and then in the end I've had to use like one piece and then add another little extra piece in the corner, like I did with the carriage shed, and it didn't look right. It looked, well, in fact it looked awful, to be truthful. And at this point, what I'm just doing is just cutting a straight line all the way through. Just to get me in the area. And then, like I said, because you work with plastic cards, when you put a pen line on it, it does tend to evaporate. So you need to make sure that you've got a pen that's actually suitable to mark onto plastic card. I can't remember what this pen's called. I think somebody gave it to me. I can't even remember. So here we are. And again, if you don't want to do any measuring, you're not a fan of measuring, you do it this way and it's just quicker and easier. And you just draw around the outline of what you have. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's an outline there. Hopefully on the big screen you'll be able to see it. I couldn't really tell from that screen. Okay, so there we've got the basic outline of the end. And I can't remember which end it was now. Is it this one? Usually I mark it, but if I'm not sure, I'll try the other end as well, see which one it fits better. I can't remember which end I used now. I think it was the other end that I did. I think it was this end, so I'll just put a little mark on it. Should have done it before, just so I knew what I was doing, but hey ho. That's fine. Okay, so the next thing to do is we need to mark out the apertures where all the doors and windows go. It does seem to be a slight overlap on that. So there you go. I'll just take that bit out. There was a slight overhang on the end there. So just cut that out. Right. Let's offer that back up. And now we can mark up, hopefully you can see this, but I'm basically drawing an outline of all the apertures that I need. And hopefully you can now see that I've made the marks, the outlines of what I needed. And then it's a case of cutting them out. Right, there you go. Now, I should actually point out as well, you can actually tell that there's a difference between the side that you should be using and the side that you shouldn't be using, because there is a slight difference in the indentations of it. And that's not it, it's this one here. Yeah, because that's the one with the mark on it. Let's offer that up, see how that looks. The next thing to do is to glue it on. Now there is still a little bit of an overlap that needs trimming over here. And that should be about right. All right, next bit. More PVA. And make sure you get right onto all the edges and stuff to stop it from sort of lifting. So you've got it like that. And again, you just massage it in as best you can for a little bit, just to as it turns out, that joint is pretty damn good. It's one of my better ones. And like I said, because it's PVA, you can sort of play with it. You can massage it a bit and see what sort of works and what doesn't. And in fact, the join was so good on both sides that I don't even have to use those curved scissors, except for a little bit maybe up there, but they're pretty much in line. Well, I say they are. It's not quite, actually. Okay. So no, I am going to have to use those scissors, but that's good because then I can show you. Right. Now, one of the other things I sometimes do is, I'll show it to you in just a jiffy. But as you can now see, we've now got that side done, that side done. But there's a slight, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a slight lip between there and there. So I'm just going to let the PVA go off a little bit And then once that goes off, then we can use the curved scissors, because that's what I use the curved scissors for. It's for stuff like that, because you can really get into it just to trim it. Just making sure that bit hasn't moved. As you can see how much I'm taking off already. Can you see that bit that I'm taking off already? And that's why the curved scissors are so good, because if you're using this flat set, you can see, I don't know if you can see, but if you use flat set, you wouldn't be able to get right into it properly. So that now is properly done, which I'm really, really pleased with now. Now what you can do is, if you get it horribly wrong, which I have done in the past, I have used filler. So don't be afraid to use filler if you've done it. I've done it before and it conceals a lot. So in fact, this corner here needs a bit of a tidy up as well. That's all it needs. And that is really good. That's a really good join, that is. So yeah, I'm really pleased with that. And the thing is, with these GBRF buildings, they've also got a little bit of fascia. I'm not sure if it's called fascia or whatever, but they've got some stripping, some decoration along the corners there. So again, any gaps that you might have there, you can hide them quite easily. So now I'm just going to get on and do the other side, and then I'll show you the complete shell of the building, really, because then it will be time to talk about paint. So I'll show you once I've done the other side. Okay, so here we are, and I've now done all the sides, and I've been really, really successful in terms of the joins. There haven't been any major dramas with them. Like I said, I have had dramas with them in the past, but if you do, you can always basically put some filler in it. Sorry, I'm just tidying up this edge because I can see there was a slight lip. So you just trim that off. And then what you do is also just take a bit of sandpaper. So let me just see if I can show you what on there. And you just take the corner off, that files it off as well, and that also trims it up. So again, that will provide a really nice join as well. So that's all done. So if I show you up really close and personal, that's it there. Now there is a slight white line where maybe it was slightly not quite right, but I won't worry too much about that, because actually once you put the plastic card strip on, you can tidy up all these little things, like if your lines aren't quite straight or whatever, you can always tidy them up. But essentially that's that building now already covered and coated in plastic card. So now we need to talk about paint. So we're going to have a chat about paint now, because at this point I'm going to be painting this. Now the reason why I'm going to be painting this now is because it doesn't really matter if it gets onto the insides. Now you could turn around and argue and say, well, wouldn't it be easier to spray paint it, the sheets, and then cut it to size and then fit them? But my concern with this is about whether or not the paint is going to crack, because it is quite flexible. So now it's on here as it is. It's now just ready for paint, and it's easier to paint it like this. And if there's some overspray on the inside, it's not going to make any difference, because the inside is going to get covered in any case. so I don't have to be too careful. As it so happens, there's still plenty of light outside. I can take this outside, give this a going over, and then also it makes it easier for me afterwards, because the thing being is when you start putting all the detailing bits, like I did on the other building, which is all the trimming that goes on the corners, all the trimming that goes on the corners, on the edges, and everything like that, it's a lot more difficult to do after if I haven't painted it, basically. So it's easier for me to spray it like this, get the base coat on, get the blue on, and then I can put the strips on, because the strips are going to be in the grey again. So obviously I don't want to overspray that. So that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it like this and do it separately. Now, as far as the paint's concerned, that's a bit of a bone of contention, at least for me. It isn't necessarily for you, because, well, if you want to listen to me, you listen to me. If you don't, you don't. Stop. You know, essentially, this is the primer I use. This was an all-purpose primer. This was the cheapest one I could find. This came from Wicks's. It's about £7. If you go to your model shops and stuff like that, they want to start charging you about anything between £10 and £14. I mean, the one in Paul that was charging me was £14, and that was for, like, I think his Wargaming one, which he reckons is the best one. I did, now a word on the Expo primer, which you might be able to also get. I wouldn't get that one. I did buy the Expo white primer from Paul previously, and I did use it, and I absolutely hated it. It was like, it came out as like a sort of like, it's almost like a foam type powder. It was really, really awful to use. So that's why I went down this, and this was actually cheap. I got it from Wicks's. Now the blue. Now I did mention this on my build one, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but for those of you who maybe haven't seen the build one update, when I originally, because I'm doing two buildings, it makes it a little bit more complicated, because when I wanted the two buildings to match, the problem that I have is that a little while ago I did a Lima HST project, and that is some while ago. It's probably going back a few years, and I originally used this paint. This is Wilko's Royal Blue Gloss paint. This is what I used. But like I said in the previous video, we all know what happened to Wilko. They're no longer around. And I think if they are around, which I'm sure they are, because I've checked them on, I think they're online. I'm not so sure about stores, but they are online. The problem is they don't sell this paint online. And this was the paint that I used for the first building. Now, when I did the first building, I thought I'd have enough to do the two, because I'd only lightly used this can. I hadn't used much of it. But in order to sort of try and save, because I wanted to make use of the cans that I had another blue, which I was going to use. And I used that but I knew that was the wrong blue, so I used that as a base blue. And then basically I was going to just blow over the building with this blue, which is the right colour blue, which is the blue that you saw on the other building. However, like I said, this is now, you know, you can't get Wilko's Royal Blue anymore. So I've had to go to Halford, try and get a colour match. And the colour match I've come up with is the S3 290. That's it there, gloss spray paint. Now, if you decide to build a GBRF one like I'm using now, like I'm doing now, and you like it, you want to make your own, and you're only building one building, or you haven't built any buildings, but you can make multiple buildings, then obviously it's not going to affect you too much, because you just buy this from the get-go and you buy 2 cans or whatever, and then, you know, you've got enough to go around. However, because I started with this one, and I thought I'd had enough, and I didn't quite, I've now got to try and colour match it. But I've got some left over on this one to blow over to try and blend them in, should I need to. So my next port of call now is to see how close that is to the other building. So I guess we're going to find out. So I'm going to go outside. I'm not going to obviously show it to you, because obviously for obvious reasons, and I'll just show it to you when it's done. And what I'll do is I will show it to you with this blue, and then I'll try and show it to you against the other building to see how close the colour matches. And if it isn't the same, then I will go and blend it in with this one, or try and blend it in with this one as best as I can. See, because this side of the building here is going to be butted up against the other building, which will be behind it. So if needs be, I could try and blend in the three sides and not so much on the back. But I'm going to try and do what I can to make it as good as possible. So as you can see, I've now painted the engine shed in the blue. Now, I'm not going to tell you just yet whether or not I've actually gone through with blending it in with the other blue, or whether or not this is the Halfords blue that I was using. I'll tell you that in a few moments. I'll let you just think about it and look at it and decide what you think, and see whether or not you notice any differences or not. And I'll just talk to you about, as you can see, for those of you who didn't see my last video, that is the current state of the single road engine shed on the left, and that's virtually complete. There is lighting to go in there, which I've ordered a strip for about £1, and that will go in there, and that will cover this sort of fueling area. But I'm not going to go too deeply into I'm not going to sort of zoom out too much, because I don't want to give too much away, because that'll be on the layout update shortly. But basically, you can see what I'm saying about whether or not you haven't got the apertures quite straight, because we're going to be, and the corners, because we're going to be doing this kind of detailing work onto this building. As for this bit here and this bit, all these little strips are all going to be covered and going on. So it is easier to actually paint the building at this stage and then go over it afterwards, like I did with that building. I did it exactly the same way. So when you look at it like this, you wouldn't really know that one of them was made out of card and the other one was made out of foam board. But by me showing you the two different ways that you can make buildings, you can decide for yourself if you're interested in going down this route, which you think is the easiest route for you to do and what you'd like to do. Now, obviously, like I said before in the previous clip, it doesn't matter that I've got a load of overspray on the inside. It doesn't matter, because that's all going to get covered up in any case. So that's not really going to be a big deal. And like I said, once you start adding all these sort of detailing parts, but what I will say is, one of the things I'm going to do that will be different. Again, every single one of these buildings that I've actually scratch built myself, they are all different. They're all very similar, but they're all different. And this one, I'm going to put a detachable roof in it, so you can remove the roof if you want to. So I'm going to be doing that to that one as well as putting the lighting and all the rest of it, like I will with the rest of this area and with that building. But as you can now see, it's coming along really, really nicely. So the next stage is to let this go off for a few days, let the paint harden, and then I can then start moving on and doing all the other bits and pieces that I need to do. So between this clip and the next clip will probably be a few days or so, just so this paint can go off and harden nicely. So I'm going to put you out of your misery now, because I nearly forgot. I literally just switched the phone off, and I realised that I didn't actually tell you whether I'd used the Wilko's gloss blue or not on top of this. And the answer is I haven't. This blue on this new building, on the foam board on the building on the right, is as per the paint from the Halfords can. So if you are going to go and build yourself a GBRF engine shed, then you don't have to worry about trying to source the Wilko's royal blue spray can, because the Halfords one has done a grand job. It's pretty much identical. There isn't too much in it. I mean, I should say, like I said in the last clip, because I did notice, because I watched my other update back, and I noticed that it did seem like the colour was completely out between what I was showing you and the picture. But in reality, it depends on the light you're seeing it through, because in reality, the light that came through the camera probably isn't quite, depending on which light you use. It comes out correct. I did see it at certain angles and it was absolutely perfect, and on other angles it looked like I had a completely different shade. But trust me, between that and what I was looking at, that is pretty much the right colour, and I'm so pleased with this anyway. And you won't be able to get this anywhere else in any case. I can't see anyone making it just yet. So at least this way I've got my own sort of scratch build that I've done myself. It's personal to me. It's my own little GBRF engine shed. and that's cool. So yeah, I did not use the Wilko's blue to blow over that building. So hello everyone, you now join me back at the sofa. It's been a few days since the last clip you saw, which is basically me showing you the two, if I remember correctly, me putting the two sheds side by side and you having a look at the two colour differences. Just before we move on, like I said, the building has moved on quite a bit, but please don't worry, because the techniques that you see in the building is what I'll be showing you now in any case. So all it is just repetitive. I have to say, a word on the blue, now it's had a few days to go off and dry and everything, and the colour, I'm really super pleased with the colour. I think it looks really good. It's been a lot easier to work with than I thought. It's not as glossy as the other blue, and it's a slightly different shade, but not a million miles off. And also we haven't got all these fingerprints to go by. So let me just quickly show you. And once again, if you are interested in this blue, it will be S3290. There you go. By Halfords, I should say. And this had a white primer, I should also say. So this is the current state of play of my second building. And as you can see, we've moved on a fair bit with this by doing the outlines, and we've done the shutters. We've also made a start on the insides, but I haven't finished it all. Like I said, there's still one end and still a side to do. And I've left that deliberately, so that side and this end to do deliberately, just to show you how I do it. Because basically this side that I'm going to show you is exactly the same as what I've done on this side already. So that's why it doesn't really make too much of a difference in terms of, you know, I don't need to show you everything, and also because the video is getting on a bit. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. So the easiest thing to do is to put this building flat on the, let me just see if we can drop it down. Oh, cool. Hopefully this will work out. Get rid of that as well. So the easiest way to get the shape without all the measurements and all the farting around is, this one has already been pre-cut, because this piece here is actually designed for the same width as this piece at the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially just draw the outlines across the front, and then that way it's all ready, marked up and ready to go, and I don't have to do any kind of measuring and all the rest of it. It's already done for me. Now what I'm going to be doing on this one as well is I'm going to be leaving the doors shut, the shutters shut. I'm not going to, because this is going to go on an end, and because I always make it with the shutters open, I wanted to do one with the shutters closed to create a nice sort of contrasting effect, essentially. And like I said, just drawing the outline, you can probably see now that I've got this sort of basic outline. Now this is just some paint from before, but I'm not overly fussed about it. It's not a big deal. So what I'm going to do now is cut this shape out. Now out of the scrap piece that's left over, I'm creating another piece. So in total we'll have 3, like I described before. So one will become the filler wall with the shutters, and then you've got the 2 outer walls, one outer, one inner wall I should say. And that's to give the depth. So we're just doing that, just following the lines as prescribed. Right, so we've now got that. So we've got that piece, and this is my outer wall. Now, again, to get the depth right and everything, I'm just going to place that. I'm going to mark this one out as well. And again, we do the same again as what we did before. And this time, I'm actually going to cut these out. Yeah, okay. So we've got that. So the idea is that this second piece here, so we've got two pieces there. So this second piece here, that will be your closed shutters, and that's got the depth there. In this bit will butt up against the outside, and that will give you another recess here. So basically you've got the depth from both sides. In fact, that's actually wrong, because that needs to be on that side because of the door. Always worth double checking these things. So we're going to need to mark this out again, so I know where to put the shutters. Right, so there you go. So this is going to be the bit that's facing the outside wall. So I now need to make some shutters, because these are going to be closed now. So these should line up on both sides. Oh, actually that doesn't, does it? Hang on a second, what have I done here? Right, so that should have been like that. What have I done here? Hang on a second. Right, so I've made a mistake, but that's fine because we're going to cover this all up anyway. So basically I mismarked it on the inside wall. So if I just remark that, that's fine. So I'll just make sure that I make it clear to myself that it doesn't matter. Like I said, it's going to get covered up anyway. So let me just remark that. So as you can see, what I've done here, there's a door and the two apertures, and on the other side, that's where I've remarked it, but you can see where I'd gone wrong before. So, yeah, so it doesn't make a difference, to be honest. So now what I want to do is make the shutters for it. Now, to make the shutters for it, I've got the same cladding that I've used for the outside, and I've sprayed this piece in yellow. But this time we're not using it horizontally, vertically, we're using it horizontally. So basically at the moment the side of the building's like that, if you can imagine it. You know, you kind of got the lines going downwards, but we don't want that because we were trying to create a shutter effect. So basically you're turning it on its side to make it horizontal. And that's what we're going to be doing now. So let me just put that to one side. I need like 4 pieces, and I'm hoping that the 4 pieces are enough on this. It might be, it might not be. You shall see. That should be good. Now the yellow I've used on this is a Tamiya paint that I had left over. So you don't necessarily have to go for this one. I think this one was like a TS6. So there you go, look. So that will be your shutter. So you can now see how far I've got now. And you can see that I've made a mistake here, but it doesn't matter because that's all going to get covered up. So you've got those 2 pieces there. And that gives it a bit of depth. Then that will go into there, and then that goes into there, and that will be your shutter. And then obviously you can paint the door in there. And now we need to put the black lines on. Now I did have a little bit of an experiment with the black lines, and initially what I've done with the yellow is I sprayed it with a white primer. And then I sprayed it with this, like I said, with the Tamiya yellow. And then what I tried to do is I tried to get into these lines to create the shutter effect by painting it individually. So I tried to, and I only did one, and it was just proving too much of a pain, to be honest. So the quickest way, and a trick that I learned from John Warner many, many years ago, when I was doing Behringer and I was doing one of the fascias ends for Dover Marine, and I was having a bit of trouble trying to get lines onto Perspex. He suggested using sticky labels and cutting them into strips, and essentially that's what I'm doing here. These are some pre-painted sticky labels, and all I'm going to do is cut it into strips, which is exactly what I've done already at the front. What I've done here at the front, you can see there's a black line. That's exactly what that is. Those, and I just wrapped it around and then glued it on, and that was how I did it when I was ready. So that's what we're going to be doing here. I'm just going to cut these little strips off, and then I'll show you how I get on with those. So here's our sticky strip, and I find that it's easier to cut straight by doing this. And then all you're just doing is literally, and it's a lot safer as well because you're not making the mess out of the lines. Now you're not going to see the back of that because that's what the card is there for, but you can see already that I've put a line on there. So let's go for another one, and then just to show you. And it's easier to do it this way than me trying to paint it in, because then they've got to be so precise with the lines. Whereas here you're already just cutting a straight line, as you can see. Look. So let's just do that again. Now only time will tell how long this will last, because this is the first time I'm doing this. I'm hoping it won't lose its stick, because this is the thing that's concerned me, that by doing it like this, maybe over time this kind of sticky labels might go off and might start to peel away. But I'm hoping, and the thing is, it's a lot easier doing it this way than me trying to paint, because you don't have to mask it or anything. Just get on and do it. So let's just try that again. And I think the results are quick and easy, and it's a lot safer, and the lines are a lot crisper. There you go, look, you can see the lines like that, which I think is going to look well smart when it's all finished. So I'm going to carry on doing that on both of these, and then I'll show you the end results. I do have some more of these. These are basically, for those of you who are wondering, these are like these sort of sticky labels that you use to do addresses that you buy from WH Smith's, and they come on a roll. I'll show you the packet if I find it, which I'll find it for you shortly. But I'll carry on with this, and then I'll get back to you. So as you can see, I'm just putting the last strip on, and what I'm doing is I'm basically placing it in the middle, and as you can see, I wasn't actually marking it out specifically, the lines, like measuring them, but what I am doing, as you can see, is wrapping around the back. Now the reason for doing that is that hopefully when you glue it at the back, it will keep everything in place, whereas if I just sort of cut it to the edges, then there might be a point where it might start to raise. But as you can see, I think that's a quite effective way of doing the shutters, and it's a clean, crisp way of doing the shutters, as opposed to trying to get a paintbrush and trying to line it all up. So now, as you can see, it's all kind of starting to come together. You can sort of fit it together. So as you can probably see, I've now just sort of added the PVA, and now we're going for the gluing the two pieces together. And once again, you're just using the close pegs just to make sure that you get a good bond. Like so. So there you go. Now you see you've got the two pieces now attached together. So now the next thing to do would be to make sure that you get the shutters attached to this, and then this wall will be done, and then this other side will butt up against the outside wall, which is this wall here. But what I'm going to do before I do that is, whilst I can gain easy access to this, is I'm just going to paint in the actual door itself, and then that'll be a lot easier job then to do. It's easier to do it whilst it's like this, so I can add all the other bits and paint this up. So I'll show you when it's all done. So I'm just going to let this go off, but here you go. That's the inner wall right there, all lined, scribed and ready to go on. So that will go on the end wall here. And then on the other side, where you can still see where I haven't added those shutters in, I'll be adding the other shutters. So at this end, the shutters will be closed, which is the end facing the wall. I thought it'd make a nice little contrast on the building, because like I said, normally on all my buildings, the shutters are open. So on this one, just to make it a little bit different, and it's going to be up against the wall in any case, I'm going to have the shutters closed. But if you wanted to basically have the shutters open like I normally have them, all you do is, as you can see here, ignore the closed pegs, but you just draw around the outline there, and that's the outline of the height, of the overall height. And all you just do is drop it down by a centimetre or something like that, just enough so you can see it, and just draw a line across. And then instead of cutting all the way to the top, you just cut up to the second line where you've dropped it a centimetre, and that will give you a glimpse of the shutter that you've got going on behind. But like I said, I'm not going to have that. I'm going to just have this side closed permanently. Well, I say not well, I guess it will be permanently. But yeah, but you can see the effect of the shutters and the trick of using just the self-adhesive labels. And all you do is, like I said, grab the black paint and just paint it onto a self-adhesive label. I've done it before with other things, and it's a lot easier to get straight lines like this. And if you make a mistake on this, it's fine. You've got more than enough labels that you can just repaint it and start again, rather than trying to get a really fine, straight, crisp line. All these lines are all nice and crisp, you know. And if I was trying to do it with a paintbrush, which I experimented with yesterday, I really didn't like the results. So this has come out really, really well. So the next thing I want to do, whilst this really sets properly, which it's probably done already in any case, is hang on 1 minute. Let me just show you these labels in case you're interested. Hang on 1 minute. So if you like these labels and you want to get these, I thought I actually got them elsewhere, but I actually got them from Sainsbury's. But you can sort of get them from Smith's. These are 250 labels, and these are only a few quid each. And I've got loads. And like I said, they come in this roll, and you just tear a label off. And that's all I've done, teared a couple of labels off, painted it into the colour that I desire. I've done it before in other colours, and it's worked really effectively. So if you want to use this trick, like I said, just go to Sainsbury's, or it would be the cheapest, but you probably get it from like somewhere like Ryman's or Smith's or something like that. And you can get a similar sort of thing, these self-adhesive labels that you just sort of stick on envelopes and things like that, where you write the names and addresses of people. That's kind of the deal. If you're interested in the yellow that I'm using, this is the Tamiya that I'm using. This is TS47. And here it is. So that's TS47. So that's a little, but that's just purely because I had this left over. It isn't any specific colour that I've seen from anywhere. So if you've got a yellow at home or whatever, you know, it doesn't have to be that specific yellow. It's more, the blue's probably more important than the yellow. In fact, it is. But like I said, it depends what you're making. Like I said, it's all open to interpretation, this whole building. Like I said, the first part of the building was initially just to show you how to actually build the actual building itself out of foam board. This second piece is totally open to interpretation, whether you want to use plasticard, whether you want to use paper. You can probably download scale scenes paper or something like that. Now we're going to move on to the roof, because I've got this side panel to do, and what I'm intending to do is have a roof which is removable. And I've never done this before, but I want to show you exactly using this piece of, well, any piece of card, to show you how I'm planning on doing it. Basically, there's a slight gap on each corner of the wall, and each gap basically has enough that you can slide in a piece of card, like so. You can see that piece of card just hanging there. So what I'm going to do is with the roof is create the roof, but create it with tabs, and then the tabs will slide in behind the walls, and then that will keep the roof in position, and it will also hide the tabs because you won't be seeing them because they'll be hidden behind the wall. So there's actually not just one layer here, there's actually two. There's the main layer here at the front, which you see, which goes right to the very top. And then there's a second layer just behind it, which is slightly shorter. And that basically allows you to slide the tab in behind it so you can drop the roof in. But I need to do that on this last piece here. And I've got the added complication of the fact that it's got an exit there as well. And I also need to put the channel for the wiring, which I forgot to do on this side, which I was meant to do on this side, but I'm going to do it on this side now. No biggie. So I'll crack on with that and I'll show you afterwards. So I've now created the two walls. So this is now gone off, so that's the end wall. And this is the side wall. And what you can see is that I've closed the shutter on this side. On the other side, I've marked the shutter. But what you can also see is that this inner piece is actually shorter. It's narrower, because what will happen is when the roof goes into this gap, it will sit on top of this bit, and it will stop the roof from dropping into the into the shed. And like I said, it'll be hidden. It'll be hidden away by the outer wall. So the outer wall will be on this side here. So this is all going to become. That's the inner wall there. So the shutter, so the roof will sit on top of this. There's also a channel here, and that'll be the channel there that I'm leaving for the wiring, so I can slip the wiring down the side and have it hidden behind the wall. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to glue it up, and I'll see you shortly. So good evening, everyone. So it's been a few days since I showed you my last clip, and I'm just coming back to it. I'm now ready to start on the roof, and this is what we've got so far. That I've now done the insides, and I've also put an I-beam in there to go across, which adds a bit of detail and also adds some integrity to the building, as it were. The real building probably would have had something similar across it anyway. Now, as you can see, it's all been secured, it's all done, and that's where we're at the moment. Now, I've run into a problem, but I'm quite happy to share it, because you live and learn with these things. Now, I was going to say I was going to do a detachable roof, and if I just drop you down, my apologies for the shadows. Bear with me a minute. I'm going to see if my VGym will work. Hang on a sec. So I've got my VGym out, which is my little portable light, so hopefully it will kind of get rid of the shadows and stuff like that and give a better idea. Now, I did say I was going to make the roof removable, and here is said roof, roof A, and I've made it so it's got the tabs on it. And the problem that I've run it with it, which is why I'm not going to use it, is although I've managed to get it to fit, it basically is not sitting flush on the ends and creating a bit of a gap, which then means that when you look at it from head on, it will just literally there's a bit of a gap there, which to me is unsightly and I'm not prepared to live with, to be honest. So I'm going to just stick the roof on. That's that side in, as you can see. And I'll try and demonstrate it to you because the concept does work. But what I failed to do is on the ends, I basically should have recessed it more on the ends, but I didn't. So as you can see, the roof is on. And it sits relatively flat, but it needs to sit flatter on the ends. And this is the problem that I have with it. As you can see, there's a slight gap on the roof. So the only way to get rid of that is to somehow glue it or tab it or whatever. But that is just not going to, that's not satisfactory for me. But as you can see, it's sitting here lovely. It's not going to come off. And as you can also see, it's also hidden behind the walls. So the concept does work. It's just that what I should have done is made a bit of a better provision to recess the ends further in. But quite frankly, I don't really want to do that because I don't want to damage what I already have and what I've created already. So for me, I'm just going to, and this just pops out. So what I've decided to do is instead go for a fixed roof, which I've created, and that will go on there. But what, as you can see, there's a load of lines on it, and essentially these lines are to mark out the skylights. I'm going to put in the skylights, and like I said to you when I did the card build originally, it is easier to do the skylights when the card is flat. So this is at this point that you to do it. So if I just show you what I'm doing here. So essentially this is the center of the building, this line here. I then divided it into two because I want two sets of skylights per side. So if you so that's the center of the building there. So that'll be side A and that'll be side B. And you can see that they are symmetrical and parallel with each other. So this is to make sure that when you put the roof on, that all the windows are going to be in exactly the right place and symmetrical, and they're all going to look straight. Because what you don't want is wonky windows. So the fact that you've put the windows all in the same place, the windows should line up both horizontally and vertically. Vertically and horizontally, that's what I should say. So you'll have one set of skylights based on this line here. You'll have another set of skylights based on this line, and one on that line, and one on that line. And then what you do is, depending on how big you want your skylights, I would take it either 1 centimetre that way, and then if you do 1 centimetre that way, you take it 1 centimetre from this side of the line as well, and you apply the same to all of them, which I'll show you. I'll just do that now. I'll start marking it out and show you. So if I show you this next stage, you can now see that there's some blue lines filled in, so that distinguishes from the black ones. I'm just doing it just actually for clarity. It doesn't really matter whether you just use the same colour. But what it does is just to demonstrate to you to keep the windows in the right place. It's like I've started by giving the windows 1.5 centimetres in from the bottom edge, which means that where the fold line is, you then measure another 1.5 centimetres in. And that means that you've got an even edge on both sides. So basically the window is going to be sitting in the middle and sitting symmetrically along the whole line. And what I've done on this side, I've replicated that on this side. So it's 1.5 centimetres between the fold line and this line, and another 1.5 centimetres between the edge and the bottom edge of the windows. And that just means that whatever you do is symmetrical and a carbon copy on both sides. So the windows should actually line up on both sides. So I'll show you the next stage, which is how much I'll actually start drawing the windows in. So I'll explain that to you in a jiffy. So I've now moved on and marked out the windows and also marked out the light bar. So the light bar that I'm going to fit once the lights come in, they're so infuriatingly enough, they haven't turned up yet. I've been waiting for them for a little while now. I would have thought they would have been here by now, but they're not here. But we can still work around it. So the light bar is going to run down the centre of the building, which is the reason why we have to take that into consideration when we come to do the window apertures. And I wanted to do some long rectangular ones, and I had experimented with a couple of sizes, but I decided to go with 1.5 centimetres again either side of the line. So this is actually 3 centimetres wide, but so that line that I originally drew, I just added 1.5 centimetres one way, 1.5 centimetres the other way to give me the 3 centimetres, and basically draw it straight across. So that means, as you can see, all the skylights are all symmetrical in every way, both horizontally and vertically. So there's an even gap between the edge of the bottom edge and the edge of the roof line, the fold line. There's another same 1.5 centimetres gap there, and another 1.5 centimetres. So it's all even all the way through. And that's why if you are planning on doing skylights, if you use the fold technique like I showed you in the first video, is to add and put them in first and do it when the card is flat. Don't try and retrofit it afterwards once it's on the building. At the moment, even though it's got a fold line in it, it's still relatively flat and it's manageable to work with. So I'm now going to cut out all these windows, and then you can see what it looks like. So here you go. I've now cut out all the skylights that was needed. And they're all perfectly symmetrical all the way through. And like I said, one of the top tips I can say is that when you're cutting these out is to always cut all the way through. And what I mean by that is, instead of trying to cut out individual windows, just go via every individual line first, because then you'll get a better cut. It'll be a perfect straight cut all the way through. For example, if you do this bottom line, just put the ruler all the way through and just cut all the way through the bottom line first, then move on to the next one and do all the next line along, rather than trying to do, oh, I'll just do this bit, okay, now I'll go over there and over there. Just basically you get a better cut and a straight cut if you just put the ruler all the way across all the windows you want to cut out, nice and straight, cut it all through first time round straight, then move on to the next line, then move on to the next line, the next line, and then you kind of go that line and that line, rather than just sort of, like I said, doing individual windows, because you'll get this straighter cut. So that is where we are at with that, and that will go into there. And then what we'll do is we will glue that onto there before doing the cladding. Now with the cladding, it's slightly different, because what I tend to do with the cladding is, because there's a slight curvature in it, well, because of the apex, it's better to do the cladding whilst the card is actually in situ, and then you can mark it out from underneath using a Sharpie pen or something to make out where all the windows are going to go, which is what I normally do. Because if you try and sort of lay it flat or try and do it flat, then it won't stick properly, because you've got to curve this. So that's why it's better to stick this on now, and then you can then put the plastic card on top. And as you can see, it's going to look really, really decent, and you can have a good look. And the thing is, especially where the shutters are, where you can't see, you'll be able to see through the top, just where the end of the shutter is in relation to where the logo is popping in. So you can see how much room you've got left to put in there. So the next thing to do would be to glue this onto the actual building itself, and then after we could start messing around with the plastic card and see exactly where everything is going to go. So as you can now see, I've actually glued this in now. And what I've done to glue this in is, excuse me, is I've used my hot glue gun, which is my little diddy one, because that's a safer one to use and it's easier to get into smaller corners. And what I did is I basically glued each corner first and took all the corners first, and then what I did is I then glued the sides through the sides here through the inside, and basically ran a bead of glue on all four corners. Well, actually all corners. So on this bit here, on the ends here, and on this, so all the way on the inside to make sure it's glued in from the inside, because what I didn't want to do is damage the paintwork on the outside of the building. So I've glued it in from the inside and it's all nicely secured. And like I said, the ends I glued through the top like that, and it's not going anywhere. And as you can see, it fits pretty well. However, that being said, I've had to use me curved pointy scissors because I've had to trim it where it was slightly overhanging the sides of the walls, but I had to be very careful with that as to not to damage the paintwork that I done. But it just goes to show you how handy these scissors are, that just to get this all nicely flush, if I had to trim it, you could just trim it down the sides without damaging the paintwork. You wouldn't be able to do that with a normal pair of scissors. So I'm really pleased with that. So the next stage is to get on and do the cladding, and that's what I'll be doing next, is doing the cladding. Because now I've done this, I can mark it out from the inside. So I put the cladding in and mark the outlines from the inside, and then after I can have it all in the right place. So my next thing to do is to do the cladding. So a good tip that I sort of learned just through my experimentation, which I didn't do on some of my other buildings, is if you mark out the fold line, now I'm just marking it out as I see it. I'm just using this pen here. That is very good at marking on plastic card. And then what I'll do is this building I'll just put to one side for a moment. Then you use those two marks that you have and basically you take your knife and score along it. Now what this does is, as you can see, it's just gone. Now it hasn't gone through, as you can see, but it's marked on the inside, and it makes life a lot easier, because whereas before when I was making these buildings, I'd cut it as two separate pieces. I've actually cut it as just one piece, and not only do you get a clean score, but you don't have to worry about marrying up the lines, because it's just all you've done is scored it, you haven't actually cut it. So that's a real top tip that I'd say. You know, I've only just found this out myself recently, because it really is kind of like, it makes the overall building and the seam, there's less seams basically, is what I'm trying to say. And it just looks so much tidier and neater compared to some of the other buildings, because now you won't see a blatant join down the middle where it's two separate pieces. So this is pretty much there. So again, put that across. Put my two marks there. And then just use the scissors to cut. Just make sure that you've cut, the planks in the right direction, so they follow it all the way down. So you've got that one there. Put that back on there. that now fits pretty much perfectly. And like I said, if you cut it a couple of millimeters too long, it doesn't matter too much. Now here you can see that we're not quite, we're a little bit over the middle. There's a center line there. So I'm going to take it from this, I'm going to say 4 lines, which is good about the planking. You can count the lines across. And the reason is for this is to make sure that you've got a good even coverage when it comes to gluing on this centerpiece when you marry up the both sides. Let's just double check this. Is it 4? Is it 5? Yeah, it should be one more. Now you always try and cut to the line, because then when you marry it up, then the seam doesn't look so obvious because it's just planked. So just carry on cutting along that line. So that will be more or less in the middle, like so, which is absolutely brilliant. And then what I do is I'll turn this upside down. As you can, I don't know if you can see, but there's kind of like some shadows here to turn around and tell me where all the holes go. But basically I'll just turn this upside down and then score it from the underneath. But that's going to have to be a pretty quick job because of the pen line evaporates. So on this you have to do one at a time because you can't just do all 4. So hello, another day. Now, I did get quite a bit done yesterday, and like I said, I glued the top of the roof, and I used, so this is the current state of play of the roof. And as you can see, it's all on, and I've made a start on doing the detailing. I haven't done this one because basically I'm going to show you how I did that over here. And also, I just thought I'd show you that I did say before, it doesn't matter if your lines aren't quite straight. You can see that this is a bit wonky. And so part of the reason for doing the detailing is not only just for the detailing to make it look nice and give it like a frame, but also it conceals some of the lines that possibly aren't exactly that straight that you've cut. And it also goes for the same along the top edges and the front. It conceals any kind of gaps, which is one of the reasons why it's so important to do the roof before you do the sort of edging, because then you can bring this edging detailing right up to the sides, as you can see here. So you can try and keep it as neat and tidy as possible without these unsightly gaps. And that's kind of where we're at with that. And I'm quite lucky. Now, what I would say is I need to talk to you about glues as well and the detailing stripping. So like I said, the roof is no biggie. Like I said, you've just seen me mark it out, and like I said, all you just do is turn it underside, and then basically what you're doing is you are drawing an outline from underneath onto the plastic card from the back end of it, and then cutting out the holes. So that's easy enough. But what I do need to talk to you about is glues and detailing. Now, when you're gluing plastic to plastic, I tend to use these two. I have mentioned them before. They're both Tanya cement, the green one and the white one. The green one is a thinner consistency, and it's also got a finer brush. The white one is the opposite. It's got a slightly thicker brush and it's a bit more gloopy to use. So depending on how you want to use it, these are the two glues that I use for plastic. So that's plastic to plastic. But when it comes to plastic to card, it doesn't actually work. So if you've got any kind of, like for example, as you've seen, the roof is actually made out of card, as you can see. So if you've got a gap between the plastic card and this plastic on the side here, and it's got a bit of card that you can see the sides of the card, what I have done is glued it with PVA because it's a bit thicker and it bonds to the card. But if your lines of plastic are like plastic to plastic, you can actually use the plastic weld and it will cement it together. But I had to use PVA because you can still see the sides of the card along the side ridge here. So the plastic strip wouldn't actually take if I just use plastic cement. The next thing to talk to you is the type of plastic strips that I use for the detailing. I've used two types, and it will become I say it will become apparent. I'll explain it to you shortly. One is the Evergreen 105, and the other one is the Plastistruct, and that is number 90747, and that's that one there. Now, when I originally started doing these buildings, or this building, I was using, and the other building, I was using this one, the 105 by Evergreen. However, they ran out. And me being me, I wanted to get the job done, and I sort of was looking at an equivalent. And this was the closest, the Plastistruct one was the closest to the equivalent of the Evergreen. But there are some differences. And let me see if I can take this little strip out. And so you kind of have to sort of, again, use your mind and consider what you might want to use it for, because this is the Evergreen, this is the Plastistruct. And as you can see, they're very, very similar. However, you can see that the Plastistruct is ever so slightly wider than the Evergreen. Sort of see ever so slightly, not that you'd notice too much, but it is ever so slightly wider, and it's ever so slightly thicker as well. I don't know whether or not this is going to come out or not, but it is ever so slightly thicker. You can feel it. So what it does is it makes it slightly more rigid also, but it's not too dissimilar. But one of the big factors is the length. Because the Evergreen is actually longer than the Plastistruct. And what that means is that on this particular building that I've made, and on the other one, this building is approximately, I think I said it was 14 inches. And that one, and the Evergreen strip will literally just cover the 14 inches in one hit. So you don't have to have a second piece to try and join it up. So basically you're minusing a join. Whereas the Plastistruct is actually shorter, which means that obviously you'd need two pieces to cover the same length. But obviously you'd have to trim it down. So just bear that in mind, that, you know, that is also something to consider. Something else to bear in mind is on, I think it's on the back edge of this one. I've used the Plastistruct on the back, which is this one, and which is where you see the shutters. And on the front, I've used the Evergreen. Now, the reason for that is because I didn't have much Plastistruct left, but on this edge here, on the top here, I had a bit of a gap between the plasticard, the card, and this layer of plastic here. And by using a slightly thicker one, I was able to conceal all of that. So you can't see any of it. So it looks really nice and tidy. But if I'd used the Evergreen, it would have been ever so slightly thinner and it wouldn't have worked. But the join on this end was actually better. So I could get away with it, but you don't really notice the thickness level. Well, you might do actually, because the actual shutters apertures are actually the Plastistruct. See, that's the Plastistruct there, look. You can tell it's slightly thicker. And that's the Evergreen there. See, that's slightly thinner, you can see. But you don't notice it too much. So these are all kind of things to kind of like bear in mind. You know, to the eye, you probably wouldn't really notice it too much unless somebody really pointed it out to you, like I've just pointed it out to you. If I just showed it to you as it is, you probably wouldn't have just even given it a second thought. But I'm just letting you know, just because it obviously it will kind of help. Especially, like I said, I found on the sides, you know, where one strip of Evergreen will do the whole side without me having to cut another piece. It just saves having to use another strip. And on the Evergreen, you get 10 strips on the evergreens, a 10 pack, and I think you get 10 pieces as well on the Plastistruct, but obviously they are shorter, so you probably, in reality, you'd probably sort of say that you get 10 pieces on the evergreen, but you probably get 9 pieces on the Plastistruct when you minus the sort of lengths that you get. So the next thing to do is I'm just going to show you how I do this. And so here we go. So let me just take that one out because that's the Plastistruct piece. Now the first thing I need to do is, like I said, this is all just marked out by eye. It's not, and I tend to mark it just below the top edge and the bottom edge. And to do that is just so when I put the piece that goes across the top, it overlaps this line, so you don't see it. Because like I said, you just want to tidy up all the lines that you've got. So they're not quite straight. But you can use this because this is a nice straight edge. And this one's gone a bit gloopy. I'm using a thicker one, but it's gone a bit gloopy now because I'm getting towards the end of it. And all I'm doing is just running a bead along the edge. And this edge is a bit wonky, but that's okay, because when you put this on, you're just tidying up the line. And you do kind of get, now I've got a straight edge now. So that wonky line is now gone because I've basically just straightened it out. And you go all the way around with that. Now let me see what you get out of this. It's the same with this one, okay. So this one I can use this strip here. And again, I'll just use it just slightly underneath. Give this another little shake, because like I said, it's towards the end. And I also overlap it on the inside as well, so when you look underneath, there's a slight overlap underneath. So I don't know, let's have a quick little check that, see if I can show you that, what I've done there. See if you can see it, hopefully. Where are we? Oh, here we are. I think this is quite wonky, isn't it? Anyway, you can sort of see it's not quite to the top, but it does sort of straighten out all the lines. So that's why I say it doesn't necessarily matter if you've got some slightly wonky lines. As long as they're not too bad, then all I'm doing then is marrying up that bit with that bit. And then I will put a line there. Give that another little shake. And you can see a bit of the card underneath. So again, you want to get rid of that. You don't want to see that from the top. So that's why you can put this bit of detail in it, and then all of a sudden it hides it. Doesn't take long to go off. As you can see, it's gone off. And then again, feed the plastic card over there. Just hold it on with your finger. Mark it out. And job's a good one. So again, we'll give it another shake with the old plastic cement. So like I said, you've now done that. All the detailing is now done. I've got to do the detailing on the sides, which is the same process, so I won't bother showing you that. But basically I'm going to put the edging on the sides. And what I mean by that is right on the corners, on both sides, like the first building. But like I said, I'm not going to show you that because it's the same process. But it's important that if you do the ones on the sides, that you do the top first, so you know where to line the sides up to, so you've got the reference. So like, for example, you can sort of see on the top where I've got this top edge here, and you want to put that line that you put on the cross here, you want to put it right up against here. But if you haven't done the roof yet, then you don't know where you're going to put this to begin with. So that's why it's important you do the roof first and then do the side detailing at the end. So we're going to do the sides, and then we can get this all painted up, and then we can think about doing the glazing. Right, so now what I've done is I've done all the detailing on the ends now. All the corners have been done, so all that's left now is to do some painting. Now the painting's going to be a bit tricky on this one, because I'm not going to be able to prime the roof, because I'm a bit concerned about masking the blue and then end up damaging the paint and making it worse. So I have originally, when I originally did the first building, I actually painted it without any kind of primer at all, and it's worked pretty well. I haven't really had any issues with it. So that's where I'm going to go with that. Ideally, I would like to have primed it, but sometimes you just got to take everything into account and work out which is the best route. And like I said, the best route was to originally just paint it in the blue first, because it makes life easier than trying to have everything sort of all clad in this kind of fashion and then sort of try and mask off different areas, because it makes it a little bit more difficult. Like I said, I don't really want to end up potentially damaging the blue, because the blues come out really well, and then it's going to make life a lot more difficult if I'm going to have to start trying to touch it up when I haven't actually got a sort of touch-up paint. All I've got is the spray can. So now what I'm going to do is just paint it, and we'll see you towards the end. And then one of the last things to do will be to do the glazing and then the lighting to finish. Welcome back to the final part of this rather long video. I hope you understand why it is this long, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So when I last left you, I was left to do with the to put in the windows. So I've now pretty much finished the building, and I'll explain it to you how I've done the windows. Now, the windows is made out of acetate, or you can either buy it, or what I tend to do is I've got a tip from Tony Northeastern many years ago about how he does it, and he basically collects all the pico points, or it comes into the packaging, that clear packaging, and he saves all of those. And also, like when you buy wheels kits, they come into this clear packaging. So all that clear packaging I tend to save for things like this, because you can use it as windows. So what I've done is I've now, like I said, the building's completely finished, apart from the lighting. The lighting I'm still waiting on. I have no idea where it's got to, but I think it's come from China, so that's why it's taking forever and a day. But I'm going to show you the building with the where it's at. Like I said, it's virtually finished. So as you can probably tell, I'm hoping you can tell by the glance, if you look inside the screen, the windows, you can see that there is some acetate in there. And the acetate was cut to the same dimensions as the hole, and it was push fit into the gap. And what it does, what happened is the framing on the top, so as you can now see that it's all been painted up. So the acetate was push fit against this frame here that we put in the plastic framing, because there was a slight overlap. So what it does, by putting a slight overlap, it prevents the windows from falling outwards, because now you're pushing the window or the acetate up against the frame, so it won't fall out because there's an overlap on the plastic framing. And then once it was push fit inside, as you can see, there's also framing on the inside for the exact same reason. So basically you're pushing the inside framing onto it to stop it from falling down, because I was having issues that when I pushed the acetate in, if I didn't put the frames in, the windows would be some of them might be a bit too loose, and then they might want to drop out. So by putting the framing in, again, you're stopping the windows from falling out. Except this time, the framing was made from one piece of card to fit the same size as the aperture, and then basically cut the outline. So you've kind of got this frame out of one. So it's actually made out of card. It's not made out of that plastic stripping that I was using on the top. And then I PVA'd it in. And then that, now, like I said, that doesn't go anywhere, and it will stop the window from falling down. So basically it's now the acetate is now wedged in between the two pieces, and it's almost like flush glazed. And also it gives a nice tidier appearance on the inside. I do need to paint the inside in some sort of gloss white just to really finish it off. But the building is now essentially finished. It's been painted, and it's also got GBRF rail freight signage on it. So here is my finished building, and I'm really pleased. Now, one thing I should point out to you, something that I didn't consider once again, it's one of those that you live and learn. As you can see, that the shutters don't 100% go down to the bottom, and I've had to retrofit do this. It's a little bit untidy, but it's not too bad. What it is basically, I didn't take into consideration that when I put the building on top of the trackwork, it was sitting a bit like that. And the reason why it was sitting a bit like that was because I didn't leave a gap at the bottom for the tracks to go through the bottom of the shutters. So basically what was happening is that when the shutters were right down to the bottom, the building was sitting on top of the rails. And it was making the building sit like that. So I had to cut that underneath piece off there. And then that way it could sit on top of the track, and then it could sit level. So this is my now completed view of the building. It's now finished apart from the lighting, but the lighting isn't going to be a million miles away to do. And with the GBRF signage, a word of the GBRF signage. Basically I got that, for those of you who are interested, because I'm sure there's going to be somebody there who's going to ask me about it. The GBRF signage came from an image off of Google Images, which I then saved because I don't have a printer. So I saved it onto a USB stick, took it to my local printers, and she just printed off a sheet for me, which I asked her to do in as glossy paper as possible. And basically that has created that, and to give the appearance of the GB rail freight. One of the other things I should note is the quality of this building now. This building, there is no warps in it, there's nothing in it, there's no bumps in it or anything like that. And that is purely because I didn't go anywhere near any Yoo-hoo on this build. There was absolutely no Yoo-hoo on this build. I don't have any Yoo-hoo. And so therefore, like I said, if you are going to build this building, I would strongly suggest that you stick with PVA. It has helped. I've had to re-glue a few bits and pieces down again where I've either missed a bit or whatever. But the thing is with Yoo-hoo, it's much safer to use, and it does give you a bit of time to be able to play with it in terms of having to reposition it. If it's not quite straight, you can still play with it. It's not one of those that you put the glue in and then it's just literally there, it's stuck. That is the final building there for the 2-road engine shed there, and I'm really pleased with it. You can't buy this sort of building, so you know, unless somebody comes up with it later, but I think I've done a good enough job. I'm really pleased with it. Just to show you the other one, this is the other building that's also now got GBRF rail freight signage on it as per the real one at Tonbridge, which I should thank Steve Smith for, because he's the one who pointed it out to me that the single road one was based on the one at Tonbridge, which is true, and I based the other one at Peterborough. So it's kind of a bit like my Freightliner depot at the front, where some bits were taken from Freightliner Leeds and other parts were taken from the Freightliner at Guide Bridge depot. But there you go, those are the two buildings done. Now, if I'm going to try and see if I can lift them both up together and see what you think. The blues are not too far off. They're pretty close. So even though this one was done in the Wilkos, this one was done in the Halfords, they've both come out really, really well, and they don't look too dissimilar. They pretty much look identical. So I'm really pleased with both. And like I said, depending on which light you look at it from, you might sort of say, oh, well, one's darker than the other. But either way, I am extremely pleased with both of them. And I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to watch this video if you've made it through to the end. I know it's been a really long video, but hopefully you'll understand the reason why it has been a long video. Like I said, it's not a 5-minute job. It is going to take a bit of patience. It is going to take a bit of time, but it's not that overly difficult to do. And then you get something that is customized to you, and you also get a sense of satisfaction that you've built something that nobody else has and that is specific to you. And hopefully I've inspired maybe some of you to have a go. And if you have any questions or comments at all, please leave them in the comments section below, because I might have missed something, I'm not too sure. Let me just give you another quick inside look of the single road one, just in case for those of you who've missed it. That's pretty plain, but that's ready to go. So I'm really pleased with that. Like I said, these two have been done as per GBRF, but it's entirely up to you how you do it. So until the next time, it's goodbye from me, Susannah, and I live with trains, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch and to comment. So bye for now until the next update, which will probably be a layout update. So until the next time, it's bye from me. Goodbye.
Thank you.